Welcome. I'm genuinely glad you're here. Look, I know you might be skeptical about a course like this. Maybe someone recommended it. Maybe you're curious, but rolling your eyes a little. Maybe you think consciousness and spirituality are just, well, woo-woo nonsense dressed up in fancy language. Good. Stay skeptical. I've been teaching this material for over 30 years, and you know who gets the most out of it? Not the believers, not the people already convinced. It's the questioners, the people who demand evidence, the ones who won't settle for pleasant-sounding concepts that don't actually change anything. This course isn't about believing anything. It's about investigating something you can be absolutely certain of. Your own consciousness. And here's the thing, most people have never actually looked at consciousness directly. They've thought about it, sure, philosophized about it, but they haven't turned their attention to the very thing that's aware right now, listening to these words, having this experience. So let's start there, with a simple question that might sound absurd at first. Who is listening to these words right now? No, really, who? You might say, I am, but who's that? Who is this I that's having this experience? We're going to spend the next hour investigating that question, and I promise you, whether you believe a single thing I say or not, if you actually do the practices I'm going to show you, something will shift. Not because of belief, because of direct observation. So let me ask you something. And please actually try this with me right now. For the next 30 seconds, I want you to just notice the voice in your head. The one that's been running commentary on everything I've been saying. The one that's maybe saying right now, what voice? I don't have a voice in my head. That voice. Did you notice it? That internal narrator, it never shuts up, does it? It comments on everything. I like this. This is stupid. What should I have for dinner? Did I lock the car? I wonder if those other people are experiencing this too. And on and on and on. The neuroscientist and philosopher Michael Singer, he calls this your inner roommate. And when you really start paying attention to it, you realize something kind of shocking. Your inner roommate is completely neurotic. I'm serious. Imagine if this voice, with all its constant complaining, worrying, judging, planning, reminiscing, imagine if it were an actual person following you around all day. Someone who got up with you in the morning, went to breakfast, and immediately started. Do you really need that second cup of coffee? You know what happened last time, but maybe you need it because you didn't sleep well. Why didn't you sleep well? Was it that conversation yesterday? You shouldn't have said that thing. You know what you said. Oh, you would never tolerate an actual person behaving like this. You'd tell them to go away. You'd say, look, I need some space. Your constant commentary is driving me insane. And yet we live with this voice every single day and never question it. Why? Because we think it's us. Here's where it gets interesting. And this is not philosophy. This is direct observation. You can verify this right now. If you can hear the voice in your head, if you can observe your thoughts, if you can notice that internal chatter, then who is doing the hearing and who's doing the observing? Think about it. Really think about it. When you watch a movie, you're not in the movie. You're the one watching it. When you hear a song, you're not the song. You're the one hearing it. So when you hear your thoughts, when you observe your mental chatter, you can't actually be those thoughts. You're the awareness that's observing them. This is not a metaphor. This is not poetic language. This is a description of your actual direct experience right now, if you're paying attention. Now, Sam Harris is a neuroscientist, not exactly a mystical guy at all. He put it this way: the sense of being a self, an ego living inside your head, looking out through your eyes, makes no neuroanatomical sense. There's no place in the brain for your ego to be hiding. So everything you experience, thoughts, emotions, sensations, all of it arises in consciousness. But consciousness itself is not any of those things. It's what's aware of them. Now I can hear you saying, okay, but isn't this just semantic games? The thoughts are produced in my brain. The awareness is also in my brain. So what's the big deal? Why does this distinction matter? Fair question. Let me give you the practical answer first. Then we'll come back to the philosophical implications. So practically speaking, when you believe you are your thoughts, you have no choice but to be controlled by them. If a thought says you're not good enough, and you are that thought, then you're not good enough. End of story. But if you can observe that thought, if you can say, oh, there's that not good enough thought again, suddenly there's space, there's freedom. You're not trapped in the thought. You're the spacious awareness in which the thought appears and disappears. This isn't just theory. Studies on mindfulness and metacognitive awareness show that this ability to observe thoughts rather than identify with them is one of the most powerful factors in psychological well-being, stress reduction, and emotional regulation. I'll tell you from personal experience, for decades, I was completely identified with my thinking. And my thinking was not nice. It was not kind at all. I wasn't nice to myself. It was critical, anxious, constantly judging myself and others, and I thought that was me. I thought I was fundamentally anxious, fundamentally critical, and maybe even schizophrenic. The day I realized I could just watch those thoughts, that I could observe the anxiety without being the anxiety, everything changed. Not overnight, but it was the beginning of actual freedom. And here's the thing, that's available to you right now, not in some future state of enlightenment, no, right now. You just have to look. All right, I want to take you through an actual practice now. This is adapted from the British philosopher Douglas Harding, and it's delightfully simple and completely disorienting. So if you're watching this or if you're listening to this, you can do this with your eyes open. If you're listening, same thing. Stay with me. Right now, I want you to notice, where are you looking from? Not a metaphysical question, literally. Where is the point of view that's experiencing this moment? Most people, if you ask them, will say something like, I'm looking from inside my head, behind my eyes. Okay, so let's test that. Without using a mirror, without using your hands, just using direct experience. Can you actually find your head right now? You can see the room in front of you. You can see your hands if you look down. You can feel sensations, but where in direct experience is your head? You might say, well, I can feel it, I can touch it, sure. But notice, when you touch your head, what you're experiencing is a sensation in your hand, and it's a sensation where your hand touches. You're not experiencing a head. You're experiencing sensation. From one point of view right now, there's just awareness and the world appearing in it. Think about that. But you can't actually find this thing called you that's supposedly separate from your experiencing. Stay with this for a moment, okay? What do you actually find when you look? So what did you notice? Some of you might have had a moment of genuine confusion, of disorientation. Wait, where am I? Others might be thinking, this is stupid. Obviously, I have a head. I'm not falling for this parlor trick. Both responses are fine with me, but here's the point. Your conceptual map of reality is not the same as your direct experience of reality. I'll say that again so you can grab it. Your conceptual map of reality is not the same as your direct experience of reality. You know conceptually that you have a head. You've seen it in mirrors, other people react to it. It's there. But in direct, immediate experience, before thought comes in and tells you what's happening, there's just open awareness. The sense of being a separate self located behind your eyes, watching the world from in here, that's a construction. It's not actually what's happening in raw experience. So again, Sam Harris, the sense of being a subject, a locus of consciousness inside the head, is an illusion. It makes no neuroanatomical sense. So you can't find it in your head. You can't find your head in your head. You might be thinking, okay, interesting philosophical point, but so what? How does this help me with my actual life? Here's how. The sense of being a separate self, fundamentally isolated from life, having to protect yourself against a hostile world, that's the root of most psychological suffering. Think about anxiety. What is anxiety? It's the felt sense of something might happen to me. The more solid your sense of being a separate, vulnerable self, the more you have to defend, the more you have to protect, the more anxiety you experience. Think about depression. Depression often involves being trapped in a story about this self. I'm a failure. My life went wrong. I'm not enough. These are narratives about a self. Even anger is fundamentally about someone wronged me, or this shouldn't be happening to me. When you begin to investigate the self that all these stories are about, something remarkable happens. You start to realize there's actually no solid, unchanging thing there to defend. Just awareness, just experience, arising and passing, appearing and disappearing. And that, paradoxically, is liberating. Now, I'm not saying you should try to eliminate your sense of self. That's not even possible. And it wouldn't be useful if it were. You need a functional self to navigate the world, to hold down a job, to maintain relationships. What I'm saying is, don't be only that self. Don't be trapped in it. All right, let's get practical now. How do you actually work with this? The fundamental practice, and this is something you can do right now today, in any moment, is what I call the observer practice. It's simple, but not easy. Step 1, I want you to notice the voice. Throughout your day, whenever you remember, just notice the internal narrator, the voice that's commenting on everything. Don't try to stop it. Don't judge it. Just notice it's there. There's planning. Oh, yeah, there it is, planning. There's worrying. Oh, and there's judging. There's fantasizing. That's it. So just notice. Step 2, distinguish observer from observed. When you notice the voice, recognize, I'm hearing this, so I can't be identical to it. Or I'm seeing this, and I can't be identical to that. You're not trying to believe this philosophically. You're just noting the direct experience. Hearing is happening, therefore you are whatever is aware of the hearing. Yeah? So you are your actions in that response. Step 3, rest as awareness. This is the subtle part. Once you've noticed you're not the thought, don't immediately collapse back into the next thought. Rest for a moment in the awareness of itself. So you think something, you see it, and now just sit there and think, okay, I saw it. Don't ask yourself what the next thing is to do. What is it like to be just aware before the mind labels it, before thought comments on it? The 10-second pause, consider this. Here's a micro practice you can use dozens of times a day. I do. I call it the 10-second pause. Before you respond to an email, pause for 10 seconds. Just be aware. Before you open the refrigerator, pause. Notice what you're feeling. Before you react to something someone else said, pause. Observe the impulse to react. Just be aware. Also be aware of what you said, maybe wanted to say. Because in that pause, you're creating space between stimulus and response. And in that space, as Viktor Frankl famously said, lies your freedom. You're practicing being the awareness that observes, rather than the automatic reactor that's run by conditioning. Let me be honest with you about what this practice is like, especially in the beginning. You'll forget a lot. You'll go hours, maybe days, without remembering to observe. That's completely normal. Don't make that mean anything about you. Just notice it when you notice it and start again. You'll have moments where you think you've got it, and then it completely disappears. Welcome to the human condition. This isn't about achieving a permanent state. It's about being able to access this awareness more and more frequently. You might have moments that are genuinely disorienting or even scary. If the self starts to feel less solid, that can be unsettling. This is why we take it slowly. You're not trying to obliterate your sense of self. You're just getting less trapped in it. And you'll have moments, maybe brief, maybe longer, where everything shifts, where you realize you're not the thought, you're the space in which thought happens. And in those moments, there's a kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, because you're not identified with the circumstances. You're the awareness experiencing them. Let's make this concrete with some more examples. Let's say in a stressful work meeting, instead of being completely swept up in the stress, you notice, okay, thoughts about being judged are arising, tension in the chest is present, all of this is being observed. Suddenly you're not drowning in it anymore, you see, you're watching it. And from that space, you can actually respond more skillfully. Okay, and let's say you're having an argument with your partner. The reactive thought arises. They always do this. They never listen. Instead of immediately speaking from that thought, you observe it. There's the always never thought. Oh, there's anger. From that observation point, you might realize the thought isn't even true, and you can respond differently. I do it all the time, usually when I'm washing dishes. That's when I'm always doing the dishes, then that thought comes up. But it's just a thought. It's not true, not very true. Okay, what about when you can't sleep at night? Your mind is racing with worries about tomorrow. Instead of being the worrier, you practice being the one who's aware of worrying. Worrying is happening. Thoughts about tomorrow are arising. You're not suppressing the worrying, you're just not completely identified with it. Often that's enough to settle. All right, let's address some of the most common questions and objections people have about this material. These are real questions from real students over the years, okay? So frequently asked question number 1. Isn't this just dissociation? Aren't you teaching people to disconnect from their feelings? Great question. No. This is the opposite of dissociation, okay? Dissociation is when you check out, numb yourself, avoid feeling, you're not present at all. What we're cultivating is presence with what's arising. You're not avoiding the feeling, you're fully experiencing it. You're just not drowning in it. You're experiencing the feeling while simultaneously being aware that you're experiencing it. Actually, most people are disassociated most of the time. They're lost in thought, not present with what's actually happening. This practice brings you into direct experience, not away from it. Frequently asked question number 2, if I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? This sounds like I'm supposed to be nobody, and that's depressing. Now, I get why this sounds concerning, but let me reframe it. You're not becoming nobody. You're discovering that you're something much more than the limited defensive story you've been telling about yourself. Most people's sense of I is actually quite small and restrictive. I'm the kind of person who's anxious. I'm someone who's bad at relationships. I'm not creative. These are just thoughts, but when you're identified with them, they define the boundaries of your experience. When you realize you're not those thoughts, you don't disappear, you expand. You're the open awareness in which all experience arises. That's how you can create your reality. That's actually much bigger than any story about me. Frequently asked question number 3. This sounds like Eastern religion. I'm not interested in becoming a Buddhist. Fair enough, and you don't have to. Yes, these insights come from contemplative traditions, including Buddhism, but they also show up in Stoicism, in Christian mysticism, in contemporary neuroscience and psychology. The Buddha didn't invent consciousness. He just looked at it carefully and described what he found. You can verify these observations yourself without adopting any religious beliefs whatsoever. Sam Harris, hardcore atheist neuroscientist, teaches essentially the same thing. The practice of observing thought doesn't require believing in reincarnation or karma or any particular metaphysics. Frequently asked question number 4. Won't this make me passive? If I'm just observing everything, how will I get anything done? Another excellent question, but the answer might surprise you. When you're less identified with defensive, reactive thinking, you actually become more effective, not less. Think about it. When are you at your best? When you're completely caught up in anxious overthinking, or when you're present, clear-headed, and able to respond flexibly to what's in front of you? Athletes call it being in the zone. It's a state of high performance where you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're just doing it with full awareness. That's what we're cultivating, not passivity, conscious action. Frequently asked question number 5. I tried this for 5 minutes and nothing happened. Is this just not for me? 5 minutes. Okay. Look, if I told you I tried playing piano for 5 minutes and I'm not Mozart yet, you'd laugh. This is a skill. It takes practice. But here's the thing. Even in 5 minutes, if you actually observed your thoughts, something happened. Maybe it was subtle. Maybe you just had a moment where you noticed, oh, there's a thought. And that was it. That moment, that single moment of meta-awareness, that's the seed. That's what you're cultivating. Over time, some moments become more frequent, more stable, more available. But you have to actually practice, which brings me to your assignments for this week. But before we go into the assignments for the week, I just also want to say that you don't, if you feel too uncomfortable with becoming aware, and you want to go back into being unaware and becoming and believing that you are your thoughts, you are free to do that and leave consciousness behind. It's always a choice. All right, here's what I want you to actually do this week. Not just think about it. I want you to do it, please. You have daily practice assignments. Morning practice takes 5 to 10 minutes. Sit comfortably, set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes, or 7.5, whatever you want, and simply notice your thoughts. When a thought arises, mentally note it, thinking. Then come back to just observing. That's it. That's it. Just acknowledge it. Observe and then observe. Acknowledge, observe. You don't have to stop the thoughts. You don't have to be good at this. You just have to show up and practice observing. Now, throughout the day, set random alarms on your telephone or for whatever, but 3 times per day, okay? When the alarm goes off, pause whatever you're doing and ask, who is aware right now? Just notice for 10 seconds and then move on and continue. Evening reflection, before bed. Write in your journal for 5 minutes. Describe one moment today where you noticed you were lost in thought, and one moment where you were able to observe. If you're embarrassed, you don't have to go into details about the thought you were lost in, but one moment where you were able to step back and observe without setting an alarm. So, and this week we have investigation questions for your journal. So in your journal, spend some time with these. Yeah? And the first question, what does the voice in your head most frequently talk about? 2, when you observe it, what's its general tone? Is it critical, worried? Is it planning, 3, can you find a moment today where you weren't identified with thought? What was that like? And 4, what happens when you try to look for the self that's supposedly having all these thoughts? That might be disorienting, but try it anyway. So, I just want to let you know that the transcript of this lecture is available in your course materials. I encourage you to read through it again this week. Things land differently when you're reading than when you're listening. In your bonus material, you're going to find a guided audio meditation for the observer practice. Use it daily if possible. And I want to leave you with this. You don't have to believe anything I said today. In fact, please don't. But I'm asking you to look. to investigate your own direct experience, to practice observing. Because here's what I know after 3 decades of doing this work and teaching it. When people actually practice observing consciousness, something shifts. Not for mystical reasons, just because you're finally paying attention to what's actually happening, rather than being lost in the story about what's happening. So now you get to write your own story. And that shift from being the voice to being the awareness, that's the beginning of real freedom. So I'm going to see you next week, where we'll dive into the architecture of your inner world, how your patterns and conditioning developed, and how you can work with them consciously. Until then, practice observing. Ciao.